What's going on, guys? It's Jimmy here, and welcome to our daily show where we discuss the fourth stimulus check update, the two new upcoming stimulus packages and infrastructure package, as well as what is going on in the world today. And may the fourth be with you, or may the force be with you, as Baby Yoda wishes you well on May the 4th. And I had some viewers comment, may the fourth stimulus check be with you as well, as they're currently negotiating right now what will be in the next stimulus package, the American Families Plan that has already been announced by President Biden. And there's about 15 different stimulus items that could be in that package, including Social Security increases. We have two different bills, one for a broad Social Security increase for all Social Security programs of $200 per month. We have another brand new one just last week for an SSI increase of $279 per month. That could also creep over into SSDI as well when all is said and done, if it's included. We also have almost 100 different Democrats pushing to have a fourth stimulus check, and not just a fourth stimulus check in the next package, but monthly recurring stimulus checks in the next package. Yeah, that's heating up. We have a new petition that has over 2.1 million signatures that says, yes, we as Americans want a $2,000 per month stimulus check, which backs the bill from the Senate that is for $2,000 per month until the pandemic is over. That is an official bill in the Senate. This bill in the Senate from Senators Ed Markey and Elizabeth Warren, who co-sponsored this bill for $2,000 per month in the Senate, actually originated back with Senator Ed Markey and also Vice President Kamala Harris before she was president. Let me know if you remember this bill from last year before Vice President Kamala Harris was president or vice president. Senators Ed Markey, Kamala Harris, and Bernie Sanders introduced an old bill to provide monthly stimulus payments during the COVID-19 crisis. This has now led to the new bill that has been reintroduced for the fourth stimulus check for $2,000 per month, which is now gaining in support and has over 2.1 million signatures on the change.org petition. You can sign this if you want. I have a link to it down below in the description of this video. At the end of this video, you can sign that if you want and add the name onto it. They're trying to get to 3 million signatures. They already have enough for the White House to be forced to respond. The White House will need to give an official response to this, as more and more Democrats are pushing to have a fourth stimulus check be a monthly stimulus check. Also, brand new information has come out about the House Ways and Means Committee Chairman, Richard Neal, who is a Democrat from Massachusetts, that he's kind of basically saying what some other Democrats are saying. And that is that they don't really agree with tax hikes. And we know that almost all the Republicans are saying this. A few Democrats are saying this as well, as these next two packages at least are their starting point is President Biden wants to raise taxes to help pay for some of these packages. As you know, if you've been watching this channel, former President Donald Trump passed 5 stimulus packages when he was there. 2 of them had stimulus checks. The other things had stuff like money for vaccines and for the Paycheck Protection Program. President Biden has passed 1 package with the 3rd stimulus check in there, but none of those 6 different packages had any tax increases. And who's going to pay for them? Well, probably nobody's going to pay for them. They're just going to go onto the national debt and likely sit there forever. Back in 1990, the national debt was around $3 trillion. Now, the national debt is almost $30 trillion, and the government already runs a national deficit every single year. So every single year, the government is spending more money than they take in with tax dollars, and that was even before stimulus packages. That just happens every year. So who's going to pay for this? Probably nobody's going to pay for them, because the government's already losing money, so to say, before they even pass the 6 stimulus packages, 5 underneath Trump, 1 underneath Biden. So who's going to pay for those? Nobody. But going forward, President Biden wants to raise taxes. He wanted to raise taxes when he was campaigning. Before he even passed the stimulus package, he wanted to raise taxes as part of his campaign promise. And where does he want to raise taxes? Well, in a couple different areas. Number one, he wants to raise taxes on corporations. Okay. And I can see the reasoning on this is because there's a lot of corporations. In fact, President Biden himself said that 55 of the top corporations in the US that make over $1 billion per year actually pay $0 in federal taxes because of tax loopholes and tax credits and rebates and foreign tax credits and all sorts of loopholes that companies like Amazon can make $11.2 billion in 1 year of profit and actually pay $0 in federal taxes. So that's insane. That does kind of need to change. I think President Biden's kind of going about it the wrong way in that he wants to raise taxes from 21% to 28%. Now, it used to be 35% when former President Donald Trump took office. One of the first things they did was pass the 2017 Trump tax cuts. That lowered corporate taxes from 35% all the way down to 21%. Now President Biden wants to raise it back up halfway, which seems like a decent compromise, to 28%. A lot of people say that this will hurt small and medium-sized businesses, though, because generally those small businesses, like if you're an Amazon seller or you run your own business with trucking or limos or whatever it is, you don't really have the type of tax loopholes that companies like Amazon do. So generally, those type of companies would pay a higher tax rate, which isn't really where it's intended to be. So they've also proposed having a minimum tax for corporations that make over $1 billion. I think that's a much better go around to have it be 15 or 20% minimum. If you make over $1 billion with a B, like Mitch with an M, but this one's with a B. If you've been watching the show for a while, you know that saying. But yeah, Mitch with a B, billions of dollars. If you make over $1 billion, then you'll have to pay a minimum tax of at least 15 or 20% so that you're paying your quote fair share. I personally think that's the better of the two tax hikes. And really, there's all sorts of different tax hikes being thrown around right now as they're trying to figure out what even the Democrats will agree to. There's been a proposed capital gains tax hike for people that make over $1 million a year, would have to pay normal income tax on it instead of the lower long-term capital gains rate of 20%. They'd have to pay the top income tax tax bracket, which Biden wants to raise to 39.6%. Basically means 40% of your income goes to the government. But wait, that's not all. You also have to pay state taxes, which can be as high as 13% in California. That would take you to 53%. And then you got Social Security, Medicare taxes, and state taxes, and property taxes, sales, all these different additional taxes. You'd be paying well over 60% of what you make to the government. Again, they don't normally have the type of tax breaks that corporations that make billions of dollars do and get away with it and pay $0 in federal tax. However, Representative Neal today, remember they need almost every single Democrat to go along with these bills to pass these next two stimulus packages and the infrastructure package and be able to pass it with the reconciliation process, which means they can pass it without Republican support. Well, even some Democrats are against tax hikes. As you can see here, President Biden's $4 trillion plan to greatly expand the federal government, this is really with both plans combined, the physical infrastructure and the American Families Plan, which is really a stimulus package. They want to raise taxes on the wealthy, but the man who would steer the proposal through Congress has his own ideas. Even as many of his colleagues rally around the cause of sticking it to the rich, House Ways and Means Chairman Richard Neal remains wary. He isn't necessarily opposed of requiring the well-to-do to pay more, but he also isn't convinced that Democrats need to fully pay for their plans with tax increases. And again, if you've been watching the show, you kind of actually understand what's happening here. Because remember, those first 6 stimulus packages, nobody paid for them. There was no tax raises, and we already know that the government spends more than they take in. So who paid for them? Nobody paid for them. It went on to the national deficit and will likely never be paid for. But these packages are different because President Biden has it on his agenda, even before he became president, that he just wants to raise taxes. It's just something he wants to do. Well, Representative Neal says that he's not convinced the Democrats need to fully pay for their plan with tax increases, especially when super low interest rates means the government can borrow cheaply. He has some other thoughts about how to dole out the benefits of this package and pay for all these increases, stimulus checks, forced stimulus check, and more. Some of the things Richard Neal wants to do is make the Democrats' recent expansion of tax breaks for average Americans permanent, revive the Obama era Build America Bonds program, which would mean that the government would issue all sorts of different bonds and basically be able to borrow money to pay for these packages at ultra low interest rates, which is where we are at now, and possibly creating a new payroll tax to subsidize the wages of daycare workers. I'm not sure I understand this one about daycare workers, but nonetheless, it's a proposal. So basically, you can see that when it comes to tax hikes, it's not easy to get everybody's approval. There's all sorts of different Democrats that have different proposals and different ways to raise taxes. We've seen some proposals by Senator Bernie Sanders, who says we can pass a bill on prescription drug prices to force pharmaceutical companies to sell them to us Americans and to the American government. Think government programs that provide or pay for prescriptions that can actually save the government $450 billion a year and wouldn't need to raise taxes at all. This could pay for Medicare increases and also possibly Social Security increases without needing to raise the tax at all. The IRS Commissioner Charles Rettig also says that there's up to $1 trillion every single year that is owed to the government through taxes, and think people that don't file tax returns but maybe should, and they owe the government money and it's not really enforced, or even individuals that owe the government money and simply never pay it and go years and years and years without any consequences. You add up all those different people and probably a whole bunch of other circumstances, and the IRS Commissioner Charles Rettig says that that is actually equal to $1 trillion that is owed to the IRS every single year. So that could pay for a lot of stimulus checks. That could actually probably pay for probably somewhere like $3,000 in a single stimulus check to you, or monthly stimulus checks of $1,000 for 3 months just by collecting the money that's owed to the IRS alone. But nonetheless, they have to agree on what taxes they're going to raise. But honestly, there's a very real possibility that they'll end up passing these next two packages, the infrastructure package and the stimulus package, the American Families Plan and the American Jobs Plan, without raising any taxes, or maybe some very minimal tax raises on the rich or corporations that they can get everybody to agree to. When I say everybody, I say the Democrats, because Mitch McConnell, who's the Senate minority leader and the leader of the Republicans, says just yesterday, no Senate Republicans will back President Biden on $4 trillion, which is the $2 trillion physical infrastructure package and the $2 trillion stimulus package. And we also have multiple different Republican senators saying that the two sides are just simply too far apart on infrastructure compromise. What does this mean? This means the Democrats will likely just pass these bills with the reconciliation process, which means they can pass it on their own because the Democrats control the House, the Senate, and the presidency, although by the slimmest of margins, which means they literally need 99 to 100% of Democrats in the House and the Senate to vote yes on these packages. They actually need 100% of them in the Senate and 99 point something in the House, almost 100%. So they'll need to get everybody on board. They can pass both these packages through the reconciliation process. I think if they end up going that route, that it'll be much smarter to combine them at the very last minute than just pass them as one. Save yourself an extra reconciliation card for later. Although Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer says they can actually go back and amend these packages. There's a rule in one of the laws, there's 10 billion pages of laws. He found a rule in there that says they can go back and amend them by just doing a simple majority vote. 50 votes in the Senate and 50% in the House, which the Democrats have. So they kind of have a limited slash unlimited amount of times they can pass packages like this. But either way, they need 99 to 100% of the Democrats to go along with it. That includes a forced stimulus check, the monthly stimulus checks that Democrats are pushing for. That includes the tax hikes. That includes the potential Social Security raises, the 2 years of free college that President Biden announced, 2 years of free preschool that President Biden announced, and all these different stimulus items. And they're negotiating on right now what can be in there, what cannot be in there. There's honestly probably a 50-50 chance that they'll end up passing these bills without any tax hikes. And you can say, Jimmy, how can they do that? Who's going to pay for this? And again, if you're watching this show, you know who's going to pay for it. Nobody. Nobody's going to pay for it. Who paid for the first 6 stimulus packages? Are we burdened with the highest taxes ever, and are our children going to have to pay for it? Well, no, because nobody's paying for that. They didn't raise taxes when we passed those first 6 stimulus packages. And when we go back to 1990, the common person would have said, or person who was worried about the deficit said, if they could have fast forwarded and seen us here in 2021 and said, the deficit is now 10 times more, 30 trillion. Back in 1990, it was 3 trillion. You would have heard people saying, our children will be saddled with this debt and they'll be burdened their whole lives paying back this debt. And here we are, 30 years later, with 10 times the amount of debt. Not that I'm for or against debt, I'm just explaining this to you, okay? We go from $3 trillion in debt to $30 trillion in debt, 10 times more. And guess what? Tax rates are at almost an all-time historic low. Okay, we have all sorts of tax breaks and child tax credits and stimulus checks, and the majority, it's like a third of Americans don't pay any taxes at all, including some corporations like Amazon. So, are we burdened and saddled with this debt? Well, no, we're not. We just discussed taxes are at an all-time low in some circumstances, and a large majority of Americans pay no tax at all. Okay, because of the standard deduction and different tax breaks than you get. So, yeah, when it comes to the national deficit, you really almost shouldn't worry about it as an average everyday person. It really doesn't affect your life. When the national deficit was 3 trillion and now the national deficit is 30 trillion, does that affect you? Does that affect your life? Probably not. The only thing that really does affect your life is, which is really a different, is inflation. Inflation is a very different thing, and inflation is something that we could be battling here in the near future. Now, is inflation that's creeping up a little bit? It's been below 2% for many, many years, including the past 12 months, okay? But now we're starting to see some inflation spike in things like food and gas and lumber, the housing market, which is not really based on inflation. It's more on a supply shortage. There's literally just a record low of amount of homes for sale, so they're selling like that. So that makes prices go up. That's how economics works. If there's a supply shortage, people still want to buy, so the same amount of buyers, then they're sold out right away. Well, then people are willing to pay more to get it, and that's just kind of economics 101. But you can let me know, the judge, if you can be the judge on if these 6 stimulus packages that are already passed and 2 more that are coming are the cause of inflation. That's yet to be determined. But the reality of it is me and you don't get to decide if they're going to pass these next stimulus checks. I don't get to decide if they're going to pass these next stimulus checks. So whether I say there's inflation or not, inflation is one of those situations where we could see inflation a little bit more than normal. It could be temporary as we come out of the pandemic, as we're dealing with supply chain shortages and stuff like that. But the amount of inflation we're seeing are certainly offset by the amount of stimulus checks you're getting and these new $3,000 to $3,600 child tax credits, and the increase of SNAP, WIC, and EBT that I just covered in a recent video earlier today. You can go check out those. If you're on one of those programs, you can go check out the increases that are coming for those. But inflation's kind of a normal thing. I mean, we know that prices of things go up. I mean, if you look back at 1990, the price of gas was below $1. I remember when I was in high school, I graduated in 1999. I remember that gas was around $1 and sometimes would be less than $1. And now we know it can be anywhere from $2 all the way to $4. I remember back when I owned my limo company, that I started with one limo and I grew it to over 15,000 customers. And we started with one limo and grew to a whole fleet of limo and buses, one by one, year by year. And after our 10th year, we had 15,000 customers. I remember there was a time back, I sold that in 2012. So this was probably around 2009 or 2010 or 2008 or somewhere in there. Gas was over $4 a gallon here in Ohio. And if you were in like California, LA, or Hawaii, gas was over $5 a gallon, maybe even higher. And then gas eventually come down. And that was just kind of like a market cycle. It went up and went down. And we're starting to see gas increase now. And a lot of people say that's President Biden's fault. I'm not so sure about that. I mean, Biden's only been in office for 3 months. That's a very Republican versus Democratic thing, and I try to stay out of those. But I do think we'll see some inflation here. Whether or not it's based because of stimulus packages, you can let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. But one thing is for sure, and almost any economist will tell you this: if we didn't pass the modern day stimulus packages, 6 of them now, we would be in we would be in a Great Depression. We'd go back to 1929. If we didn't have money to support the people, money to support the businesses, money to support the vaccines, money to support schools, all the money that's been passed through these different packages, we'd literally be in a 1929 recession right now. Imagine if they took away those 3 stimulus checks from you, they took away those unemployment bonuses from you. If we go back to the Great Depression, we didn't even have the Social Security program or the unemployment program. If you lost your job, you were out of luck, and there was nobody hiring during the Great Depression. People were losing their jobs, and there was no Social Security programs. There was no disability, there was no SSI, no SSDI, and the Social Security program where you would pay money into it and get paid back later with a basically a form of government pension. So the Social Security program didn't exist. So you literally had no money coming from the government at all, nothing. There was no help, no support, no nothing, no stimulus checks, no stimulus packages. And trust me, the world was a lot worse off back then. And I personally think that the modern day stimulus package is here to stay. I don't think that these 5 packages passed under Trump, 1 passed under Biden, maybe even 3, as there's 2 more on the horizon. And I don't think that that is the end of it. I think we could see more this year, but I think even more going forward, that when the next economic crisis comes, whether it's a pandemic or just a plain old economic crisis like we've seen in 2008, 2009 with the housing crisis, I think the stimulus package, the modern day stimulus package, is here to stay because it boosts our economy and prevents us from having a 1929 crash where up to 50% of the population's out of work. There's no jobs, there's no government support, and there's no food, and you're literally there's nothing to help you but going into the next world war, which is how we eventually came out of that. But I think the modern day stimulus package is here to stay. And the next major crisis that we have past this pandemic, whenever that may be, I think we'll see several stimulus packages passed, just like we did in this one. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. I'll keep you up to date on these 2 new upcoming stimulus packages and the negotiations, the potential tax hikes, the potential Social Security raises and Medicare raises, and the 4th stimulus check, and all the other stimulus programs in there like student loan debt forgiveness and free college. So don't forget to subscribe down below. It's completely free to do so. New videos come out every day at 10 a.m., 3 p.m., 8 p.m., and 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Don't miss an episode because we cover different packages and different stimulus provisions in different episodes. You can click on this video here to watch my newest stimulus check video next. And this video is about the recent video I did about SNAP increase, WIC increase, and pandemic EBT increases. Click on that if you think you might be eligible for free food from the government or additional money. Click on one of those videos next. Thanks, guys, and I will see you in the next video.